Football's officially back. Oh, yeah. It's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South. Y'all see the Mouth of the South sign up here now? Looks a little bit crooked on the camera. I don't know. I'll see it in post. But anyway, I am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South. Texas Southern alum, former TSU Herald Sports editor, and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Make a Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate GM. Ultimate College Football Head Coach is a brand new mobile game that is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. Uses promo code LOCKEDONCFB in all caps, everything, LOCKEDONCFB, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program and begin your coaching legacy today. It's the MEAC SWAC Challenge. It's FAMU versus Norfolk State. It's week 0. It's the beginning of college football. Y'all, I can't believe that it's taken this long, but I'm excited because we've kind of crept up to it. We've eased into it, and now we're here with the first game. For those who are new, this is what we would do every single Friday, except for next week. Next week, we have something special planned for you. But every single Friday, this is what we will do. 3 matchups, 2 storylines, and 1 key to victory for each team. So in that order. So that means we're kicking it off with our 3 matchups, and the headliner of this whole thing, the beginning of it all, has to be Norfolk State's defensive backs versus FAMU's wide receivers. There's no bigger headlining matchup in this game to me than this group versus that group, right? So when it comes to Norfolk State, that's the headliner of their team to me. That's the duo of Devon Allen and Terron Mallory that is really going to have me watching, right? Let's say you have all 22. I wish we had all 22 just every single play. But my eyes will consistently be on the defensive backfield. That's where it would be every single time because you have a cornerback tandem in Mallory and Allen that are extremely productive, right? Because you have Mallory, who led the conference in interceptions. You have Allen, who led the conference in pass deflections despite having a hand injury that ended his season a little bit early. He still had double-digit pass deflections. You put them together in one secondary. Now you have a very productive, as far as ball production, you have a very productive secondary, a very productive cornerback tandem. And that's what the highlight is for me because, yes, I understand. Norfolk had 13 all MEAC players, preseason all MEAC players. I get it. There is a lot of talent on this team. Something's missing as far as translating that to victories, but there's a lot of highly touted athletes and a lot of highly touted talent that is on this team. I get that. But of everybody, I'm looking in the secondary to see what's going on with Allen and Mallory. Norfolk State's new cornerback coach, Michael Johnson, had a quote about them and about how he's only spent a few months, but this is his biggest takeaway. Terron and Devon, they're students of the game. So they're not just seniors who are going through the motions. They're older guys who have been through it. They're constantly wanting to get better. They want to be coached, right? And I was reading an article about both of these men. Obviously, this is the headline, and this is where we're going to spend the bulk of our time. I think that you'll see things are different. We'll approach different weeks different ways. Sometimes we may have more matchups that are interesting. So now we have to split our time evenly. But this is by far the one I'm the most interested in. So we'll spend the bulk of this segment discussing the cornerbacks versus the wide receivers. But Allen and Mallory are great friends. I was reading an article about it and about how their bond together is just different. Stay on the same apartment complex floor. They're not roommates, but apparently they stay on the same floor in the same complex. How they're brothers. Y'all know how it go, right? Not everybody has that tightness with the people in their position group. I think that elevates you. I genuinely do. I think that when you have a certain level of closeness in your locker room, whether that's with another individual, whether that's with your position group as a whole, or whether that's with your side of the ball, I just think it elevates you a little bit. There's certain things that elevate, certain intangibles that elevate a team, and I do think closeness on that level does help, right? I'm not going to get too deep into that though. Anywho, both of these men are Aeneas Williams watch list members, so you know that they're one of the two best defensive backs in black college football. So now you switch over to FAMU's wide receivers, and it's just question marks, man. Like they lost their big hitters. But one thing that they do out there in Tallahassee is they reload at the wide receiver position. They know how to get wide receivers. They know how to get people who are homegrown talent to come back home and perform really well when they don that Rattler helmet, right? They know how to do that. So I'm trusting and I'm really interested because now it's not Willie Simmons. So it's a little bit different, but I'm still going to trust that they can recruit that talent. So now who's going to step up into that spot? It's a little bit different. If you're looking at a guy like Jamari Gassett, let's say Gassett becomes the one and not one of the transfer receivers. It's a little bit different when you have a larger role. And some players rise to the occasion, some players don't. And you never really know until it happens. So I can't predict whether or not Gassett's going to do that, right? Because you've seen wide receivers. Let's use Juju Smith-Schuster. And he wasn't even a number 2 receiver. Gassett wasn't on FAMU last year. Instead, Gassett was I would call him probably the third receiving option at wide receiver behind, was it third? But basically it wasn't 1 or 2. For some reason, I'm forgetting the pecking order right now at this current moment because there's somebody I really want to put ahead of him, but I can't figure out why. But I know you had Shareed and you had Riley. So let's look at a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster. He did not rise to the occasion when Antonio Brown left. He became the number 1 receiver, and we saw he was not ready for that. But then you look at a guy like Michael Thomas, who he was the number 2 receiver in New Orleans, and then Brandon Cooks left, and then boom, he's the number 1, and he's an all-pro player. So you have different trajectories, but it is a different responsibility. You can't just say this guy was good as the 3rd or 4th option. He will be good as the number 1 because there's different pressures, meaning he'll have to go against the lead corner every single game. Some people are ready for that. Some people aren't. It's kind of like a running back who becomes a bell cow after being the accessory, after being the change of pace back. Now you have more carries. Your workload is different. All of those things impact how you perform in your specific role. I cannot wait to see how FAMU performs in their roles. I really can't. Who's going to step into the role of Riley and Shareed? Excuse me. I really want to call him Shaheed because, you see it right here. But you probably don't even know if you're not a Saints fan. But anyway, the point is, I really personally want to watch and see how do the FAMU wide receivers step up. They have a new quarterback. They're going to have a new pecking order. They have new wide receivers, period. Like there's just so many interesting factors when it comes to the FAMU wide receiver. But one thing I can really lean on is the fact that they have done this consistently. They have known how to recruit talent. They recruit a certain style of wide receiver. I cannot wait to watch, and I will have all eyes on the passing game of FAMU in tomorrow's game. Now, that being said, or tonight's game, depending on if you're watching this on Friday night because it's an evening show, or if you're watching this Saturday morning. Now, let's push through these next 2 really briefly. Kelvin Dean versus Kevon King. And these are 2 positions, same positions versus positions. I'm going to do King versus Dean, and then I'm also going to do the quarterback versus quarterback battle at the end. So with Dean, he meets that same criteria of stepping into a bigger role. He had the 3rd most carries on FAMU last year. And I know I've heard many people say, well, he is the best of the bunch. And I've heard that a couple of times. But at the same time, he is going to have to step into maybe having the most carries, maybe being pretty much even. I don't know, but that'll be interesting. I can't wait to see that. I see the talent for sure. I just want to make sure that when more carries come upon him, he's now able to handle that as well. So now you have Kevon King. And by the way, I actually trust Dean to make that jump. I know I'm posing questions. And it's funny because you have Norfolk State who's returning a bunch of players. So like they don't have this question of what if. They just have the question of can they be good? Like that's the question. With FAMU, it's new talent coming in, and it's a what if, what will they do, right? So how will they step into these roles? Meanwhile, Norfolk State is a lot of returning players. So boom, you have King, who did I get everything out on Dean? No, I didn't. He had a 5.2 yard per carry. That's really good. I will take that any day of the week. With more carries should come um probably a similar. I think he can sustain that similar yards per carry, but he will get into the end zone more. So he'll become a more impactful player. Maybe you'll see him in the receiving game anymore. He had those 2 big touchdown catches in the Celebration Bowl. So you never know how Dean is going to react to having more usage, whether that's receptions or if that is carries. So I want to make sure I got everything out on Dean. I'm actually a believer. I know I posed the question, but I can answer that question with a little bit of confidence on my side. Now you have King, and King is a player who's a second team preseason all MEAC guy, right? So they're going to run the ball. I find it very difficult to believe that with a new quarterback, you're not going to run the ball heavy when you are already a run heavy team. That's just, it's difficult for me to believe that Norfolk State is going to abandon what they have going on at that position. I'm a little bit skeptical when it comes to that, right? So with that being said, I expect them to run the ball heavily. They ran the ball more than anybody else in the MEAC last year. Kevon King is going to be the guy who pushes that forward. So with Dean and King, it kind of leans into my final matchup, and we'll get this one out now, is the quarterback battle. The reason it leans into that is because I'm pointing at Dean and King to be the engines of their offense, even if it's just for one game. Even if it's just like, okay, we need to get our quarterback acclimated. You have Richardson, Daniel Richardson, the starting quarterback for FAMU, who he has experience. He's done this before. It's not as if he's never played a game. So I think you may have a little bit more trust in him to come in and use his FAU days where he had 2,000 yards, he had 13 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. You're probably going to ask him to bring down those interceptions because one thing Cozy made a heavy point about, whether it was in fall practice or summer practice, excuse me, or if it was in spring practice. And that was, look, we want to take care of the ball. Like, I need the player who's going to make less touchdowns, if it means less interceptions, than more touchdowns and more interceptions. So I'm sure that 13-10 is not going to work for Cozy, and I don't think it's going to happen. You mitigate certain risk. Players play different ways in different systems. So 65% completion percentage. You're looking at Daniel Richardson, who's coming in and probably is going to be significantly more comfortable than Jalen Daniels will. Jalen Daniels is a JUCO guy. He walked on at a SEC, didn't play, came to the JUCO ranks, and now he's at Norfolk State, and he's playing for the first 4 games. It's probably the most interesting thing that's happening. Excuse me, it's probably the most interesting thing that's happening at FAMU or at Norfolk State. And when they're on defense, I'll be looking at the corners. When they're on offense, I'll be looking at the quarterback because I really want to know how Jalen Daniels is able to perform. Now, as we push forward, because I had so much love for the defensive backs and the wide receiver matchup, that went a little bit longer. But now we're going to go to our 2 storylines. And it starts with the pressure on each team because it's drastically different depending on which side that you're looking at. And we'll do that as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Hey, Locked On HBCU fans, I want to give you a heads up and tell you about this beautiful game. It's amazing, and it's Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Now, maybe you always said, that's the call you should have made. That's the call. Man, why ain't you running the ball? Now it's all on you, right? And you can build your college football program to glory. Maybe you're going to build FAMU to another Black College Football Championship. Maybe you're going to build Norfolk State to a Black College Football Championship. You have these options, and it's really on you on which way that you want to go. Ultimate College Football is 100% playable offline. So maybe you're on a flight, maybe you're just somewhere where you don't have good service. You can still play this game, right? Don't play the game and drive, of course, but you can play the game if you're on the road and you're a passenger. You can do that when you don't have great service. So to download the game, all you have to do is visit ultimate-cfb.com. That's ultimate-cfb.com. And if you use the code Locked On CFB in all caps, Locked On CFB, you will get a free boost to your program out of the game store. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On College Football. It's week 0. The games start tomorrow. Matter of fact, we might have had a game today. I feel like they might have done a Friday game somewhere. But go ahead and check out Spencer McLaughlin's show, Locked On College Football, and he'll get you prepared for all of the news around the opening of the college football season. Right now, we're doing our storylines, 3 matchups, 2 storylines, 1 key to victory. This is a weekly thing. Every Friday, this is what we do, right? So this is how we preview our game of the week, and you usually know what the game of the week is at the latest on Thursday. But most times I'll tell you before that because I'll have it figured out by Wednesday. So anyway, so you have 2 storylines to watch here, and the pressure is dramatically different on each team. Like, it's dramatically different if you're looking at FAMU's perspective versus if you're looking at Norfolk State's perspective. Let's look at Norfolk State first because it's way simpler. It's pressure on Dawson Odom from within to be better enough to not lose his job. Like, you just have to improve enough to not lose your job. I don't think there's any expectations on Norfolk State. There's no outside, you got to be this. This is what we expect from you. What they expect from Norfolk State is to not be good. Like, just from what I'm seeing, there's nobody who expects Norfolk State to be one of the best teams in the MEAC. They don't expect them to be a competitor for the conference championship. So there's no exterior pressure to me. It's all inside. It's all interior pressure, and it's about Dawson Odoms and his job security. I know that there's people who are like, hey, look, Odoms does not deserve this job. Odoms is this, Odoms is that, Odoms is this, Odoms is that. That's the pressure. Meanwhile, FAMU, they're looking at a situation where all eyes are on them. People are looking for them to fail. People are looking for them to succeed, right? It's a lot of pressure to sustain. I'm just going to be real. And this isn't just in this game. This is throughout the season I'm looking at for both teams. There's a lot of pressure on FAMU to be contenders. There was a movement to get Cozy, and the idea was that Cozy could be a repeat champion. Gives you the best chance to be a repeat champion. In order to satisfy that claim, I feel like you need to be a contender. I don't know if the pressure within FAMU is that we need to be a championship team, period. That is the standard. We will win it all. Or if it's just contending again. But I think from the outside, we all heard that. And now we have an expectation that because James Cozy is there, FAMU will be a competitive team. And not competitive with 3 losses or competitive with 4 losses, but they're fighting in every game. No, I mean competitive as in close to the top of their division. That's what I mean, right? So I think that's the expectation for them. And because they've been so vocal about that expectation, I now have that same expectation for FAMU. I may not know what the team is going to be. I've repeated that over and over. I'm not passing judgment, but I do now have that expectation for FAMU because the fans have consistently told me that's what they're going to be. Okay, cool. That's what the standard is. That's what the expectation will be for me. And that goes to the players too. It trickles down, man. You got to have an immediate impact for players who are in different roles, players who are new to the team. You don't have time to really wait around because this is the MEAC SWAC challenge. And I'll get to that in our second storyline. The stakes are way higher. This isn't just some random game against Miami, right? You're not just opening the game with something or opening the season with something random where you can finally get your groove together. No, you're opening the game with a MEAC opponent. Then you're opening the next week with a MEAC opponent again. So you have back-to-back MEAC opponents to open up the season. I think that a statement has to be made. Just getting it together, it doesn't matter in the long run, but we know that these SWAC versus MEAC games just mean more. They just mean more, especially with them coming over from that other conference. Like, it just means more than a regular FCS game or a FBS opponent. Like, it just means more. So to me, I can't sit here and wait for them to get it together. I can't wait for them to warm up the engine. I need immediate impact from those new transfer and bigger role players. Now, the second thing that comes into it is kind of what I alluded to. This is for conference supremacy. This is for conference supremacy, man. Like, at the end of the day, we talk about the MEAC SWAC challenge, or we talk about the Celebration Bowl, but we don't really talk about the MEAC SWAC challenge and how the tides are and who's winning. Like, that's not a conversation we have because it's the beginning of the season and it's significantly less important than the end of the season. But to me, being able to have bragging rights over the other conference is important. And God dog it, y'all see the flag behind me. I'm a SWAC guy. I want to have bragging rights over the MEAC. That's just simple and plain what it is. So to me, that is a huge storyline. MEAC, SWAC. We're always going to have this argument about who's the better conference, and these type of games are the biggest talking point and should be the biggest talking point next to the Celebration Bowl on who has the best conference as far as football goes. So we'll look at that. But anyway, let's get into our keys to victory. We're really quick now. We've gone through the matchups, and that's the biggest thing. It's 3 of them, and that's the headliner. I'll explain a little bit more on why these 2 segments are shorter as we start the next one and we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime, and Gametime is the best place for all of your tickets, right? Because sometimes tickets can be a hassle, man. Doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter what you're going to. Let's go ahead and get some tickets. Maybe you're in a new city, you want to find something to do. Tickets can be a hassle to find. So you just go ahead and go to Gametime. And if you're new, you use the code Locked On College. You get $20 off your first purchase. But if you're not, you already know you get the flash deals, you get the zone deals, right? You have all of these options to improve your buying experience. And by improve your buying experience, I mean have them be cheaper, because nobody wants to pay as much. If I could get $1,000 product, for sure that product for $100, I think everybody in the world would take that deal. Maybe skeptical, something's wrong with it, but these are tickets, and nothing wrong with the tickets. And you get to view your seat before you even pick it. You get to view the view from your seat before you even pick where you're going to be seated. It's a beautiful option. Just go ahead and go to Gametime. Use the code Locked On College. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. And after that, you'll keep running back. As wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day, every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. Now, I'm not going to name drop, but we have a guest coming on the show next week, and I already did the interview. We did it early. It'll be put out next week. It'll be all done. I can't wait for you to hear it. But when I was talking to this guest, he was telling me about how week 1 is so drastically different than week 3, 4, 5, right? And I know this, but it's always great to hear it from the coach's mouth. And guess that kind of a spoiler of who it is, but not really, because it could be anybody. It's a couple of coaches that it could be. You never know. But anyway, when you have week 1, it's more about yourself and less about who you're facing, because there's not as much game film on everybody. Now, a team like Norfolk State, who's returning a lot of players, maybe you feel like I can game plan based off what I seen last year. But a team like FAMU, I definitely wouldn't feel confident saying that. They have too many missing pieces. Oh, a storyline I should have brought up, and I'm going to bring it up now because, and this is just a personal thing, I should have brought this up. FAMU's linebackers. I loved the duo of Major and Chaney. You will not have them starting this year. And I can't wait to see if FAMU's linebacker play is where it was last year. If it was, or if it is, that's going to be amazing. But I love the duo of Major and Chaney. That was right next to the Morgan State duo. They were right there neck and neck for me. So that's what I should have brought up. That's one of the impact players that when I'm talking about you stepping into a bigger role, that's something that needs to happen. Anyway, all right, to these players, you may not feel that way about FAMU because they have a lot of new missing pieces, or new moving parts, I should say, moving around, whether that's players who are stepping up into a bigger role or transfer players who are coming in. FAMU, so we'll start with them. FAMU has to run the football well. I feel like Kelvin Dean is probably the guy that you feel like you can lean on. You have to run the ball because that's your guy. That's your guy. Of everything that you have, I feel like that's the one thing that we can trust. And Kelvin Dean has to be a big part of the game. In the last 3 games of the season, he had less than 5 carries. He didn't get more than 10 a lot of times. I need about 12, 15 today. And it's not just him, right? You have to make sure you run everybody. You got to have a run by committee. That's just typically how it does. You have multiple running backs. But I need you to run the ball and run the ball well. That's going to be the key. And everything is that you have to be able to run. I expect with having a new quarterback, having new wide receivers, though I'll be watching both of those entities, I want to see how does the run game keep the offense on schedule. Maybe not 1st and 13 or 2nd and 13. How about let me get a 2nd and 6? Can I get a 3rd and 2? Right? Like, let me get in the 3rd down situations where I can run the football. And a lot of times running the football is what gets you there because you get more consistent yards. They're not explosive plays, but you still get them done nonetheless, and you're moving towards the chain. It's sticking and moving, or a nickel and diamond is what they call it. Usually used for the passing game, but I'm gonna use it in the run game because it still makes the same message. And then you have Norfolk State, who they got to get Jalen Daniels comfortable. That's it right there. You got to get Jalen Daniels comfortable. When you're looking at your quarterback, he's coming from the JUCO ranks. With Daniel Richardson, he's played at Florida Atlantic. If they come out and air it out, I wouldn't be shocked. I'm still looking at the running game to be the engine and the thing that pushes them forward, because I believe there's a lot of trust in Dean. When you hear people speak about him, they're like, hey, man, he was the best running back here last year anyway. Just didn't have as many carries and all of those things. But with Daniels, you gotta get this guy comfortable, because Daniel Richardson has a FBS background. I think Florida Atlantic is FBS, but he was at Florida Atlantic last year, threw for 2,000 yards. Jalen Daniels was at a JUCO last year. This is a step up for him in competition. You got to get your quarterback comfortable. Kevon King can only do so much. There's only so many plays that the running back can make. Or excuse me, there's only so many games that you can win without your quarterback making a few plays. That's what I was looking at. That's where I was going with it. But you got to get Daniels comfortable, whether that's with the run game, whether that's with quick passes, whether that's with good protection. It's probably going to have to be with all of them, right? It's probably going to have to be with all of them. You want them to get a rhythm. You want early in the game for Jalen Daniels to feel comfortable. You don't want him to have to go into the third quarter and it's like, okay, I'm already throwing an interception. I had a couple of turnover-worthy plays. Like, that's not what you want. What you want is him to go into the second half feeling like the guy. So with that, you need to have some short passes that work for him. You need to have some easy throws that can lead to some yards after the catch. You need to have offense moving. And FAMU should produce a good defense with Cozy still out there. So it's not going to be an easy task, right? Like, you're expecting them to have a dark cloud defense, but no one said it's supposed to be easy. Get Jalen Daniels comfortable. That's the key to victory. If he's not comfortable, you're probably not winning. Point blank, period. Now, I appreciate you. This is a live stream. We'll be back with another evening show on Monday. Mondays and Fridays will all be evening shows. And I'll try to remind that as the week goes on for the first couple of weeks of the football season. But we'll be back on Monday to recap this game and do a little bit of preview for that week's of action. Or that week of action for other teams. In the meantime, between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.